Perfect focus is a critical part of taking great photographs. If your subject isn't in focus, you might as well throw the picture away. With point-and-shoot cameras, you never have to think about focus. But with an SLR, you have total control for truly professional results. But it takes some effort and some practice. Your camera will start focusing as soon as the shutter button is pressed halfway. That's why you need to get in the habit of pressing the shutter button halfway down, pausing for a beat or two while the camera focuses and calculates the exposure, and then press the shutter button the rest of the way to take the picture. On most digital SLRs, you'll have a choice of at least 2 different autofocus modes, plus a manual focus mode. But I don't recommend using manual focus, except in very unusual circumstances. I don't think today's cameras and lenses were really designed to be used in manual focus mode. And even if you had experience using manual focus on SLRs in the past, you'll find that manually focusing a modern digital SLR is very challenging. And why bother anyway? The autofocus systems of most cameras are so fast and so accurate when used properly that you couldn't begin to compete with them manually. However, autofocus isn't completely automatic. You just can't point the camera and start shooting. You have to put some effort into it if you want to take great photos. First of all, you've got to pick the best focus mode for the subject you're shooting. And as I said, every camera has at least 2 autofocus modes. Depending on your brand of camera, the first one might be called single servo, AFS, or one-shot. In this mode, the camera focuses when the shutter release button is pressed halfway, and then locks the focus. As long as the shutter button is held down, it remains locked until the picture is taken or the button is released. This mode is best suited for landscapes, posed portraits, or any subjects that don't move, because once the camera stops focusing, it won't refocus if the subject moves. That's why the second autofocus mode is the one I use 99% of the time. Depending on your brand of camera, it might be called continuous servo, AFC, or AI servo. This mode is good for just about all kinds of photography, but is mandatory for sports, action, candids, or any time the subject might move. When the shutter release button is pressed halfway, the camera sets the focus, but continues to monitor the scene so that if either the camera or the subject moves, the lens will refocus continuously to adapt to the changing situation, right up until the very instant you take the picture. But the next question is, how does the camera know which part of the frame to focus on? For example, in this picture, do we want the camera to focus here, here, or just let it decide automatically which is best? If you let the camera decide on its own, it will probably guess wrong as often as it guesses right. The camera can't read your mind to figure out what you want to be in focus. So after you've selected an autofocus mode, you also have to tell the camera which area of the frame you want the camera to focus on. That's called the autofocus point, or zone, or area, depending on your brand of camera. From here on out, we'll just call it the autofocus zone. Some cameras have up to 45 zones to choose from. But here in this viewfinder, we see the more typical arrangement of 5 zones. On most cameras, if an autofocus zone flashes red, then it's being actively used by the camera to set focus. Or in other words, whatever part of the scene that is behind that focus zone is what the camera is going to focus on. The active zone, or zones, can be selected automatically by the camera or manually by you. However, we don't need to spend any time looking at the automatic modes, because for best results, you should always choose the active zone manually. If you don't choose the focus zone yourself, how do you expect the camera to know which part of the frame you want to be in focus? When you choose a single autofocus zone, you are telling the camera exactly what to focus on, by placing the zone over the part of the picture you want to be in focus. It's like the sights on a gun. You put the crosshairs over the top of what you want to be in focus, and that's where the camera will focus. On most cameras, you can choose the active focus zone quite easily with a joystick-style control on the rear of the camera. Which one of the zones you choose at any given time is up to you. and your choice will vary depending on the subject and how you are framing the shot.